You're watching Screw It on SuppleWine. I'm your host, Mike Supple. This past week, I took part in a lunch with David Powell, who's the chief winemaker and managing director at Torbreck. It's a winery based out of Australia that's known for their high-quality, high-end, and somewhat expensive Shiraz-based wines. And not all of their wines are as high-priced, but none of them are particularly inexpensive. But I would like to point out that I've tried all of their wines from several different vintages, and I really do find that they tend to always over-deliver. So if you're looking at one of the wines by Torbreck and you're looking at the price tag and it's something in your budget, you're going to generally get more bang for your buck on their wines than many other wineries. That being said, this was a great lunch. We had a fantastic lineup. I did bring my camera, so I took a little footage of David talking about his wines. Camera's a little bit shaky, you're going to have to excuse me, we did have a lot of wine. But David made some very interesting points about his style of wine, about the Australian style of winemaking, why they call their wines Shiraz, whereas the French call them Syrah. It's the same grape, but they generally have very different stylistic characteristics, and he talks about that a little bit. He also talks about the other wines that he makes, Grenache wines, what types of wines he likes to drink, and where his wines sort of fit in the scheme of the global market. So I thought it was really interesting, wanted to share a couple points with you. Enjoy.
Syrahs have completely different tannin profile. The tannins are sootier, sort of more powdery sort of tannins, where Shiraz, the tannins are softer and rounder and richer. I think the aromatics of the wines are quite different. The more Syrah wines that I consider to be more Syrah made more, they're more reductive and all that sort of stuff, where Shiraz is much more voluptuous and much more open and aromatic, if that makes any sense. I'll talk about an earlier stage. With whether you could argue that wines made in the Shiraz style wouldn't age as well as wines made in the style of Syrah. And of course, when I talk about Syrah, I'm basically talking about wines made in cool climate. So you get some of the cooler climate areas in Australia, that's the way I see those styles of wine compared to the stuff made in warm climates like Barossa and Clarabelle. I make no bones about the fact that I make fairly big, rich, full-bodied wines, because that's what the Barossa does. It's a warm Mediterranean style climate. We've got these heavy sort of generally red clays over limestone, and obviously different variations on that. So I make wines that I think have a sense of place. And it's interesting too, because we've been there's been a lot of things that have happened, and I've actually made this pretty unpopular in Australia because I've been fairly vocal about it. I think that Australia in general as an industry hasn't been putting its best foot forward. It's certainly dominated by some bigger companies that tend to be much more interested in promotion and commercial value than actually making fine wine. Torbreck is, I make no bones about the fact that yes, it's in the Barossa, which is in Australia, but I didn't create Torbreck to be another Barossa winery. I created it to be able to stand on its own and up against some of the greatest wineries in the world. And a lot of people think that's incredibly arrogant of me to say that, but when you think that I work with some of the rarest and oldest raw material, why shouldn't we be? I get a lot of stick at home from the local press in Australia about the price I charge for my wines, and say, well, we make world-class wines, we charge world-class prices. In fact, I think even something like Rundrig, if you put it up against all the great Syrah-based wines in the world, it's still a bargain. It's actually not an expensive bottle of wine. If you look at it against, the single vineyards from Pigalle and the Chapoutier wines and all this sort of stuff, and a lot of what other people are doing. Manfred Frankel is a great mate of mine. Manfred's wines, things like that. I don't think Rundrig's an expensive bottle of wine. In fact, I think in its category, it's actually pretty cheap. Trust me, I might get away with it, charging a lot more for it. But right now, I've got to sort of be sensible. The other thing about Torbreck too is that we make two styles of wines, two streams of wines, if you like. The Shiraz are obviously what we're best known for, as Australia in general, and the Barossa in particular. The wines I particularly love the most, and the ones I enjoy making the most, are Grenache-based wines, more the southern Rhone styles. For several reasons. First of all, making a good Shiraz is actually not that hard. You can look and you can find great Shiraz-based wines pretty well anywhere in the world. It's an incredibly versatile variety, whether it be cool climate, warmer climate, hot climate. Shiraz, and you can get young vineyards, old vineyards, even high-yielding stuff can still make good, quaffable wines, where a lot of other varieties don't do that. Grenache is a lot harder to make good Grenache-based wines. You really do need older vineyards, or if you work with younger ones, you've got to work really hard on keeping the yields down. Grenache, I always say to people, is like warm climate Pinot Noir. Oxidises really easily. You've got to be careful with your acid levels. You've got to be careful with your pH. There's a lot of stuff you've got to look at. And it's a lot harder and a lot more finicky to work with than Shiraz. The other thing is, of course, I always say to people, every winemaker will tell you that his wines work with food, but the fact is that a lot of wine doesn't actually work very well with food, particularly from the New World. And the great thing I love about Grenache-based wines is because they're more mid-palate wines, they're actually much more versatile with food. I think the Grenache-based wines actually work a lot better with when you're eating out. I quite often, if I go back to a restaurant, I normally either drink Grenache-based wines from wherever, Spain, France, or Australia, California, or Pinot wine. They're the sort of wines I'll actually order. When I finish, I don't mind having a big red sherry for people, but I don't want a big Bordeaux or a big Mount Cab or a big Australian Shiraz in general when I'm actually sitting down leading. I've never opened a bottle of that sort of stuff. It's always been a Grenache or Tempranillo or something like that. They're the sort of wines I much prefer to drink when I'm eating. I always have a glass of wine when I'm eating at 125 kilos, so I can say I've had a lot of practice in eating and drinking. So